Good evening. My name is May Gerstel. Welcome to the second election forum this year. This evening, you'll see and hear from candidates running for the 43rd Legislative District. That's an open seat, position number 2. Following that, you'll hear from the candidates running for the citywide Seattle City Council race. That's position number 8. Now, please welcome Ann Brand, who's our moderator this evening.
Wow, a full house. We're glad to see you all here tonight. We have a little confusion on my part this evening because a couple of candidates who had planned to be here are not going to be here. So I've been trying to figure out how I can juggle the questions to get more in than we would have had had we been with the full panoply of 4 candidates for each position. But thank you for being here, those of you who are. Okay, you're welcome. We're going to start tonight with the candidates for the legislative position. We've been so used to seeing Frank Chop come around that this is really an exciting change. I have been told that I speak too fast, so if I'm going to try to slow down, but don't hesitate to raise your hand either if you can't hear or one of us is speaking too quickly. So thank you for helping me out there. And May, thank you for your introduction. I'm just going to go through the format and ground rules to familiarize those of you in the audience with them. Our candidates have these rules. They're the same for both groups of candidates. And to begin, each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. This will be followed by question and answer period when candidates will have all of 60 seconds to respond to each question. At the end of the question and answer period, there will be a closing statement from each candidate. Since this is a forum, not a debate, there will not be a rebuttal opportunity. However, candidates may include such remarks in their closing statements should they wish to do so. Candidates, please note, we will appreciate your honoring the signals of our timers. This will ensure that we are fair to all of you and that we can cover as many topics as possible. Our timers, Adele Reynolds and Doris Ray, are in the front row and will give you a warning sign that will alert you when you have 15 seconds, and then you will get a signal to finish. And I do have a cane back here, and I've been known to kind of help people finish if they run on too long. Proceedings, by the way, are being videotaped by Horizon House for later replay in-house and on the HH YouTube channel. Now for opening statements. This is the only question you have received in advance, so please include the answer in your opening response to this question. Please tell us why you are the best candidate for the state legislative district position 2, what your goals and emphasis is in this position, and how you plan to accomplish these goals. Let me assure you that I have a very structured way of calling on you all so that you don't all appear in the same order. So we will start with the opening statement. Well, originally it was going to be Sean Scott. Sean, well, instead we'll start with Daniel Carcella. And please stand because we are taping this and people can see your face and hear you better if you're standing.
Test. All right, there we go. I begin. Hello all, my name is Daniel Caracello. I want to thank you for providing us the time to speak with you. Of course, of course. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from Miami, Florida. My mother fled with her family Cuba during the Communist Revolution, and I grew up among the Cuban exile community. This really shaped my political worldview, to say the least. I have since, obviously, moved to Seattle. I fell in love with the city, take advantage of the many amenities that the city has to offer, and it continues to inspire me every single day. I now believe that the best utilization of my skills is to be your representative in Olympia. My primary objective is to accurately represent this district. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, this is an incredibly diverse district. That means diverse in the demographics of people and also the differences in our political thought. I have extensive, diverse experiences that allow me to bridge the gap between the average resident of the 43rd and our state legislature. I share some of the goals of my colleagues here. I want to see affordable housing, but I know that we might differ on the strategies on how to accomplish that. Beyond that, I want to implement recycling initiatives that incentivize environmental awareness and environmental sustainability. I also have worked in the technology industry and have a postgraduate degree in information management, which leaves me well positioned to create technology and data privacy legislation, especially with emerging trends like AI. I also want to see increased investment into education and infrastructure, recognizing these as the cornerstones of a functioning society. Now, to accomplish all of this, we need a legislator who could effectively legislate. In the past, I've worked closely with Democrats, I've worked closely with Republicans. I've worked in nonpartisan capacities, and with all of that, I believe that I have the effective, I could be an effective collaborator in Olympia, sorry. I'm not a political outsider. I have extensive political experience in both academia and a professional capacity, and I'm not an extremist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrea, would you go next, please? And let's hold applause, by the way, till the end of the forum. Thank you.
Test? Great. Thank you, Anne, and everyone here at the Horizon House for having us here. Thank you, Tanya Wu, Sitting Council Member, for being here today as well. I know you're up after me, but I wanted to recognize that you're here. And yeah, my name is Andrea Suarez. A little bit about me. I grew up in Staten, Oregon, and went to college at Oregon State University and moved to King County in 1997. So I've been here just about half my life. I turned 50 in January, and I bring corporate experience, having been an operator for a startup, running multiple distribution centers, working with blue-collar staff, and growing a business and managing a multi-million-dollar budget as a general manager, and then later became a sales executive running multi-million-dollar budgets for my territory, which was now the Pacific Northwest. I live in Belltown for 15 years. I live in a condo, and I didn't have children, and it's really giving me a lot of pent-up nurturing and love and care for this city. I founded We Heart Seattle in 2020. It's a grassroots movement. I'm very proud that the movement happens to be a 501c3, but we're most proud that we've led more than 14,000 hours of field work, picking up more than 1.3 million pounds of trash, 35,000 needles, and restoring equitable access to our parks and shared spaces. And it was a day actually meeting a senior in Bell Street Park who told me that his kids and grandkids no longer came to downtown because there were needles everywhere. And after I exhausted every avenue to have our government or the Find It, Fix It or the Adopt a Street or the mayor or SPU or SDOT or SPR or somebody to pick them up, I went to Home Depot and bought pinchers, and from there bring practical boots on the ground field work with solutions to Olympia, and that's my differentiator here today. And I'll share with Daniel that I am not an extremist.
Thank you. And now we turn to our other candidate. Please introduce yourself and give your opening statement.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Lloyd Agnew, and I am an accomplisher. I have an extensive resume in the field following Frank Chapa. He had no clue about me back in the day. I was one of the pioneers for the first affordable housing per the vice president of the United States, who called me on the telephone and asked me to go to the Olympia and to get the first batch of money back in 2015 released. And I was able to go down there. I didn't know, not a senator, and I had the first batch of money signed for affordable homes, which are now you've seen being done. My second phone call came from the President of the United States of America, Biden, Obama, excuse me, who asked me to go out to the community because we were falling behind in the Affordable Care Act and to get as many people signed up before the signing date. And I went out for 3 days and 3 nights and screamed my head off, and people probably thought I was losing my mind, but it was gonna cost people $175 per person if they didn't sign up by the closing date. My goal was to shut down the websites. I was successful to shut down that website. When I heard it on the news, I was glad, because that bought people who wasn't listening enough time to realize what I was saying and to be able to sign up and go get those benefits before it closed. I'm also a doer. I opened a company in St. Louis, Missouri. I have extensive career in aircraft and highly esteemed security clearances that get me through to be able to accomplish all the things that I plan to accomplish here in the 20-year plan that I've seen that was established. And I want to make sure the 43rd is going to get some of that money, and we're going to distribute it, and I'm going to fill Frank Chopper.
Thank you, Stephanie, and don't sit down, because you were going to lead us off on our first question. I'll read the question, and if when your turn comes, if you want it reread, let me know. Here's the question. Just imagine you've been elected to this position. What is the single most important issue you would like to correct by authoring your signature piece of legislation? Please be specific.
I would like to, right away, get affordable housing under control, because I'm living in one and it's becoming no longer affordable because there's nobody keeping an eye on the money. The rent starts off affordable and eventually it goes up to where the people who were trying to stay affordable are being housed out of their housing again, and that's because nobody's watching the money. So that would be one of the things I would like to accomplish right away. And I'd like to get the children to go to school without having fear of going to school. And when they get in their school, they know they're safely getting there, because we're going to have metal detectors before you even step on the property.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
The next person to go in the cycle is Andrea Suarez. Do you want me to repeat?
No, I'm good, thank
Okay.
you. And I like Stephanie's ideas as well. I share her ideas. After being on the doorbell, I might have answered this a little bit differently, because my focus is so much in the belly of the beast with homelessness and drug addiction, untreated mental health. But I think something that can get done very easily, and I want kind of a win right away, is to amend the current tenant-landlord legislation that was a tsunami of restrictions tsunami of legislation that protected the tenant more so than the landlord. And I've been meeting a lot of once landlords on the doorbell who used to rent out their house or their basement, and believe there's potentially thousands, if not 1 million, affordable units in our boomers' homes throughout the state that are no longer being rented because out of fear of too strict eviction law and rent cap fears. So I would get after that one right way to exempt owner-occupied landlord for some of the legislation to protect tenants.
Daniel, you're up.
Yeah, these are all great ideas. As a legislator, we need to recognize that we are going to work on a variety of issues. I'm not going in with 1 or 2 pet projects. I do want to support affordable housing, like my colleagues. I do want to, support some of these issues as well. But where I think I have a unique position to create real, meaningful, quick change in the legislature is with technology policy. Right now, with the advent of things like AI, this is going to lead to job displacement, skill gaps, which lead to unemployment, erosion of labor standards, and it could just bring about a lot of negative effects. Our government usually works in a bottom-up way where our states are going to create more meaningful restrictions than our national government. So I want to make sure that we could see ethical deployment of AI. We invest in reskilling and job programs, and also digital literacy for both our students and seniors so that they understand the tenets of data privacy in the advent of such emerging technology issues.
Thank you. And Andrea, we're going to start with you with question 2. And the question is, Washington and Oregon have been reported as having the highest increase in fentanyl deaths in the nation. What would you do as a state legislator to combat the fentanyl crisis?
Well, this is 100% in my wheelhouse, and indeed, over the last 2 decades, imagine 66 airplanes fall from the sky in the state of Washington due to overdose death. That's the death toll, is 20,000 people in the last 2 decades. And I think when you put that visual to how many people we lose to fentanyl overdose, we need to change our approach immediately to a treatment first. Low barrier treatment, meaning friction-free, easy access 24/7 to treatment facilities. And we can convert certain properties right now to be those, and fund treatment first in alignment with housing first, and redistribute money to those programs as a requirement. If you're going to hand out a piece of foil, a pipe, or a needle to an addict, you must also have a conversation with them about drug and alcohol counseling right then and there. That is an immediate for me.
Thank you. And Daniel, we're going to start with you this time. The question is, we need thousands of additional homes. I'm sorry,
Do I respond to the previous question?
I beg your pardon. That happens to me when I'm doing lists that don't have people on them. Thank you very much. Please, your response. Thank you, everybody.
My response to the fentanyl is, where is it coming from, number one? Number two, I recently went to a ribbon cutting in Renton that had opened up a new mental health facility. I would like to see one of these facilities established in this area, which will take people in and will work with them. No, we can't get them all because it's such an epidemic. It's beyond control. And to try to capture it is to try to figure out how it's getting here. And that's going to be hard to do when we don't know where it's coming from. It's so getting these people off the drugs is going to be a very, very difficult thing unless we, back in the day, we had crack that disappeared. Now we have fentanyl. It could disappear as well, but something else is going to take its place. So what do you do? Thank you.
Thanks. Now, Daniel, we'll go to the next question.
Oh, wait,
Whoops.
I need to respond to this fentanyl one.
Man, I'm just wanting to rush you off there without giving you a chance. I beg your pardon.
No problem, no problem. So the fentanyl issue definitely is, it's part of a larger issue. People turn to drugs after they become homeless, after they lose a job. The fentanyl came, the highest rates of fentanyl abuse came after COVID. What I want to see is, I don't want to see incarceration as the solution. I still want to see dissuasion. I want to see civil penalties, but there definitely needs to be investment into mental health facilities. I agree with Andrea here that we need a treatment first initiative, but also we need to stop people from getting out onto the streets and using fentanyl. We need to keep people in their jobs. We need to keep people in their homes. And hopefully that tackles the issue at its core, but then also making sure that we, like Stephanie said, reduce the amount of fentanyl coming in, and like Andrea said, treatment first.
We're going to start with Daniel this time. We need thousands of additional homes for the currently homeless, as well as for the growing population. The numbers of housing units in Washington, especially for middle and low-income persons, must be increased. Can we become more efficient in creating more homes with housing funds already allocated from the state, or must additional state funds be developed?
Yeah, so this is where I differ with one of the opponents who isn't here right now. I believe strict policies of things like rent control is going to dissuade investors from actually building more housing, which is the core of the issue. So in the past, we've seen our legislature enact policies that streamline the permitting process. We could also cut down on some of the red tape so that developers can build more housing, because when there's more housing, the market is going to react in a way that it becomes more affordable. I think we have a really healthy state budget. I'm not against adding new progressive forms of revenue, but I'm definitely against unnecessary tax increases. So I'm going to shy away from going to that as my go-to policy when it comes to this. And given our healthy state budget, I just want to make sure that we're making it so developers can build more housing.
Next up is Stephanie.
Excuse me. To answer that question, again, back in 2015, I went down and got the first initial money to build affordable homes. I live in one now. It's no longer becoming affordable. And the investors are investing, but they're not putting the money back into these places. They're taking them, ciphering it out, raising the rent, letting the buildings become deteriorated, drug infested, and all kinds of craziness. And I think we need to remove the investors, and because they're getting money from Section 8 and HUD, and they're not doing anything with that money but just pocketing it and even building more that may help. But if you can't afford to live there, you can't afford to live. They've raised the rent too much. You can't afford to live there. Thank you.
Andrew Zip.
The fastest, most efficient way we can build more housing is to remove the bureaucracy and the red tape and the permitting process. I talked to multiple affordable housing developers, NHTSA Stegan, Great Expectation, and Lake Union Partners, who are working with the Amazon Equity Fund, which is a $3 billion fund, essentially free money to developers that know how to build fast, efficient, sustainable housing, and they're standing up 8,000 units in the Puget Sound alone. So group hug there for that option. And then also consider adaptive reuse. I live in an old hotel, and now I have a condo. So let's reuse and repurpose what we already have up and standing instead of cutting down more trees to build ugly stuff. We don't want to look like Houston, we want to look like Paris. And then change the condo liability laws to make rent-to-own properties a part of Seattle again.
Thank you. Moving on to question 4. Would you support or oppose legislation to limit the percentage of annual residential rent increases, and why? Starting on this is Daniel.
Yeah, so I think this goes back to my previous answer here. I'm hesitant to support caps on rent increases. And the reason why is when you establish really strict caps, what you'll see is some of the things that Stephanie had mentioned. Landlords aren't going to want to maintain their buildings. It also doesn't necessarily help people who are not currently renting. It keeps people in their places and dissuades, once again, developers from building more units if the landlords, if they could cap the funds that they could do. So yeah, I'm definitely hesitant to cap those rent increases. I would like to see affordable housing solved in different ways.
Thank you. Stephanie, do you want to answer that one, please?
I want to cap the rent on affordable housing, because when people move in, they moved in based upon the rent was low. And then you'll get in 160 days a notice saying your rent's going up by $35. These people go into immediate panic because they moved in based upon what they can afford. Now they have to figure out how to come up with this additional money. This is the first year. The second year is going to happen the same thing. They're going to be priced out of affordable housing. Cap it, because the money is not being put back into the housing, affordable housing. It's going into the builders or the profiters or whatever you call them people, that want to, the investors, I'm sorry, they put the money, but they don't allow the renters to stay. They're going to be back on the streets again, or the mothers that are struggling to pay the rent when they moved in are going to be really struggling because now they have to come up with an extra 35. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Let's welcome Sean to the table. Sean Scott, a latecomer. We're glad you're here, but sorry, we're almost halfway through here. We are going through questions in turn, or as I call on you, and you have a magnificent 60 seconds to respond. Do you want to join in?
If I could understand what the question that we're...
Yeah, well, I'll read them to you. I'll read each one as they come up, and then each one, I call on each person to answer, and I kind of change the order as we go along.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I will answer this question.
Yes, please
as
do.
it's
And then
my
I'll
turn.
call on you to do it.
And I'm for rent stabilization and with tailored law that takes into consideration inflation and major repairs. And I don't think there's a flat fix all that decentivize small landlords. If it doesn't pencil out, they're just going to sell that wonderful affordable apartment unit to a corporate developer, and we take affordable housing out of the market. So we want to have a fair, balanced approach to what rental increases look like. I would like to see more of a focus on rent-to-own properties, like I said earlier, by changing condominium liability laws for builders to stand up and bring back home ownership again, bring back a dream that renters can become homeowners and start having that conversation and legislate programs that teach people to budget and learn how to access first-time home loans, FHA programs, and down payment assisted plans and get people owning again.
Thanks, Andrea. Sean, the question is, would you support or oppose legislation to limit the percentage of annual residential rent increases, and why?
Well, I definitely support all proposals that would be on the table that would limit rent increases, which are a #1 cause of not only displacement in the state of Washington generally, in the city of Seattle in specific, but also are a root cause behind our houselessness issue as well. With respect to increasing access to home ownership, I'm proud to be endorsed in this race by Representative Frank Chopp. I worked with him in the 2023 legislative session to pass House Bill 1424, which was a bill that directed monies towards a stabilization account for Black and brown homeowners. I believe that when we take care of some of our most vulnerable folks with respect to housing, everybody else is better off, generally speaking. I think that this is one of the major issues that is impacting the people of our district. I have talked to Representative Nicole Macri, who supported us in this race, and I know that she is going to be looking for a champion from the seat on this issue in specific, and that's a big part of the reason why I'm running to represent the people of the 43rd in Olympia.
Thank you, Sean. And you will have an opportunity at the closing to kind of introduce yourself, which you missed to begin with. Okay, the next question. The following 3 questions could be answered with a simple yes or no. However, it is important for us voters to understand the reasons for your position. So here we go, and we're going to start with you, Sean. What is your position on the initiative to repeal the capital gains excise tax imposed on long-term capital assets by individuals with capital gains over $250,000?
So there was a moment, I am opposed to all attempts to repeal progressive revenue that we have at the state level. I am opposed to all attempts that have been waged by very well-heeled Republicans in the state of Washington to make sure that we don't have the revenue to fund the programs that we all use. Pretty much everywhere you look, whether it's schools, whether it is housing, whether it is building the climate projects that we need in the state of Washington, you see the roots of economic inequity, the fact that we are a state that has as many well-heeled individuals as we do, but also people who are sleeping on the street, a state that has some of the highest density of millionaires in the country, but people who are struggling to pay rent, people who are struggling to meet basic needs. That is an untenable situation. It is an unfair situation. We can do something about it. I oppose attempts to take Washington state backwards with respect to progressive revenue. We need to fund the public trust with all the resources that we can.
Thank you. Andrew, would you take that one next? You want me to repeat it? You okay?
I oppose the repeal, and I would add that I'd like to see transparency and accountability with where those tax dollars go. And my position in Olympia is to make sure that we're putting tax revenue towards helping people get the treatment they need, because the #1 crisis, in my opinion, are the lives lost due to fentanyl overdose in our state. And our predecessor, who's endorsed Sean, and also his, hopefully my seatmate, Nicole Macri, of course, have built out DESC, Solid Ground, and Low Income Housing Institute, and some of these programs that are low barrier, where my friends and family are dying inside, and I want to bring treatment into those programs and use that tax dollar to help save lives.
Okay, Daniel, you're up.
Yes, I oppose the measure to repeal. Like I said previously, we have currently a really healthy fiscal forecast for our state. Any repeal of revenue will lead us to start looking at other forms of taxation, which I think could, in this state, lead to another regressive tax. So I think the way it currently stands is a good progressive source of revenue, so I do appeal the initiative.
How about you?
I'm for it because there are too many schools that are being shut down. And we need to look at our future, our young children who are now being displaced. And if that money is going to go to building better schools, bigger schools, so that children won't be crowded in the classrooms, and if that money is going towards helping the youth, not so much the drug, we could deal with that at some point, but we're needing to save the youth. So if that money will be used to build more schools, pay the teachers, pay the fire department, pay the police, and then we can increase our protection, because nobody wants to be a fireman or a policeman because they're not getting the money to put their lives on their line. But I want about the children. That's what the money should be used for. Save the children. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. The next question we have is, what is your position on the initiative to prohibit carbon tax credit trading and repeal provisions of the 2021 Washington Climate Commitment Act, a state law that provided for a cap and invest program designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 95% by 2050? And we'll start with you.
I do oppose repealing that. I am for addressing the looming and existing catastrophe of global warming. I believe in science and stand for anything we can do to to lower the temperature of Earth. Sorry, stumbling on that one. So I met with the local 32 plumbers and pipe fitters union, and they taught me a lot about where they stand on things like the natural gas ban. And I think I don't have all the answers today, but what I do promise you is that I'll work with the stakeholders that can educate me on what makes sense and is pragmatic and doesn't harm our lower income, middle class working voters and neighbors that are often impacted by these luxury beliefs.
Stephanie, will you take that one again?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
What is the question? My mind is.
Okay. The question is, what is your position on the initiative to prohibit carbon tax credit trading and to repeal provisions of the 2021 Washington Climate Commitment Act, which was a state law that provided for a cap and invest program designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 95% by the year 2050?
I am a sustainable person. I gave away a 2018 SRX Cadillac, and now I take the bus, I take the train, I walk, and I want to help with the global warming because I've come from St. Louis, Missouri, and when I was in St. Louis and I moved here in 2011, the temperature has drastically changed. So I know that there's a global warming here, and to reduce the carbon and to try to keep Seattle in the green and the forestry so that we have the oxygenization to grow our greenery and our vegetables. So I would be for, I believe, keeping it to where we're gonna, keep the greenhouse so we can keep our beautiful state with fresh air. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
So I would oppose this initiative to repeal that. I think it's being proposed under the guise that it will lower energy costs and your gas prices will go down. But there are so many other ways that we could accomplish that. And repealing this will make us go backwards when it comes to creating a sustainable state that will lower our carbon emissions. So I definitely oppose this initiative. And there are other ways to lower your gas prices, which I am for.
Sean?
Right, so every environmental organization that has endorsed in this race, from Washington Conservation Action to the Transit Riders Union to Puget Sound Sage, has endorsed my campaign because of our campaign's vision for environmental justice. So I oppose the Republican attempt to repeal the Climate Commitment Act in Washington State. Voters of a certain generation might resonate with the name Jim Ellis, who was somebody who was a civic visionary, somebody who believed that we could do great things in Washington State with public parks, with well-funded mass transit. A lot of his vision in the 1968 and 1970 forward thrust initiatives was not realized. In a lot of ways, we are still paying the price for that failure in some ways. I would like to see Washington become a state that takes on big climate projects, that has the civic ambition and the civic will to say that the climate crisis is one of the defining crises of our day. We have the resources to do something about it, provided we muster the political will to do something about it.
Thank you. We'll start with, this is probably going to be our last question before we have closing remarks from the candidates. I'm sorry we have a bunch more, but this is a very full panel and a very eloquent panel. So we'll just keep going here as far as we can. Daniel, will you take this one first? And the question is, what is your position on the initiative to allow all employees and self-employed individuals to opt out of paying the tax and receiving benefits under Washington Cares, the state's long-term services and support trust healthcare program?
So, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? That's another initiative?
Right, it is another initiative, and it is to allow all employees and self-employed individuals to opt out of paying the tax and receiving the benefits under Washington Cares, which is the state's long-term services and support trust healthcare program.
Yep. Yeah, so this is another initiative that I would oppose, simply because I want to make sure that this service is being fully funded as much as it can, and that requires people paying into it. So yeah, this is an initiative that I would oppose. That's my simple answer.
Andrea?
Would oppose it as well. I was glad to see that there were some last-minute amendments made that allowed for portability. There probably should be some additional review, which I'm all ears because this is a new topic for me, on the opt-out and if somebody already has health care that they've planned for in advance. But really this is about taking care of seniors who didn't have family planning or the means to think about their senior years. So it's a looming catastrophe in senior care, and I have some other great ideas that I'd like to bring to Olympia, and I will save those for another time.
Thank you. Stephanie?
That's a loaded question because no one ever thinks they're going to get old. And right now, serious. But seriously, the younger youth right now, they don't have a retirement plan like we have. They have to take their own money now and set it aside and put it in their own 401k, whereas we've had companies take our money and put it aside for us. So when they get our age and they haven't opted in to have that, when they don't think they're going to get this age, they're going to realize that it's going to be too late because there's no help for you. Yes, I know it's going to cost some money out of your pocket, and you don't see the long term of it because you're not that age yet. But when you get that age and you realize that you need it and it's not there, and Social Security won't cover much, but you'll be without health care. Thank
Sean?
you.
Well, care labor is the backbone of our economy in many ways, and the conversations that I've had with SEIU 775 Northwest, the caretakers in that union, it's been made very, very clear to me that there are a good many caretakers that are feeling burnt out, a good many caretakers that have not had the rest that they need. And part of what we need to do is make sure that caretaking, generally speaking, is a field that people want to enter into because they realize the tremendous value that it has to our society. I oppose attempts to defund the WA CARES Act. I believe we need to move in the opposite direction from that attempted repeal by fully funding all attempts to make caregiving a sustainable industry, so to speak, for people to enter into. It's part of the reason why we've been endorsed in this race by SEIU 775 and 925 as well. So we look forward to having a robust conversation in the course of this campaign about what we can do to make sure that we're taking care of our aged population, disabled folks in the state of Washington, others who might find themselves in a position where they need care as well.
I think the candidates have done a terrific job answering these questions in just 60 seconds. I'm sure that they have more to say on all the subjects. And the one area we did not get to, which was part of what was submitted to us to ask our candidates, had to do with our transportation system and the role of the state Department of Transportation and its budget. So file it away. If you're sticking around afterwards, probably somebody's going to collar you and ask you about that. But we need to move on now to the closing statements, and each of you will have 2 minutes for your closing statements. And I have juggled the order of everything for so many times. It looks as though I'm going to be starting, Stephanie, with you for your closing statement.
I don't have any big names behind me. I don't have not one endorsement. I haven't talked to Frank Chapa, nor have I talked to Nicole. But apparently there's been conversations without me. I don't have to have all that because I have the streets, I have the people behind me. I'm a boots on the ground. I'm a doer. I've opened companies. I've got access to the president. I have access to the senators. I don't have to have all the names and I would like to get the endorsements, but somehow or another there's a lot of chitter-chattery, but that doesn't stop me from coming out here because the streets is where the real people are at, and I'm a real person, and I'm here to solve the real issues. I'm not going to be hiding behind my door. You can call me at any time, any place, anywhere, and if I can help you, I will help you, just like I helped these people in this building that burnt down. I had to take time for my campaign, and I'm so far behind, but I'm catching up now. And as soon as I get through with the governor's thing and all these other things, at the end of the week, I'm going to see my grandbaby, and then I'm coming back, and I'm hitting the streets, boots on the ground, handing out flyers. If I don't have one endorsement, I'll have the people backing me because I'm a real person, and I'm here to solve the real issues, and you'll be able to contact me, and I will talk to you and come see you, and I'm not so important that I can't visit you. I haven't talked to Frank Chapa, but I have followed his. He didn't know I was the one back there to getting the money for the initiative for the affordable housing. It was me that helped him to do what he did. He never knew me. I never knew him. Affordable care, everything that's going on here, I was boots deep underground. And now I'm going forward because I'm time for me to come from there and bring it to the people, and I'm going to make the 43rd district the best it's ever going to be. I'm going to raise the bar. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next up is Andrea.
Follow that one, but thank you, Stephanie. I am boots on the ground as well, and having been out there in the field, housing hundreds of people and removing barriers to get them access to resources that we have in the state of Washington. We find hundreds of beds every day for people to go, treatment centers, halfway houses, job navigation through second chance employers like Anu, Fair Start, Orion, WeldWorks, Pioneer Human Services, wonderful programs. And this little cute boy, baby Oliver, was living in a tent in Ballard. He'd been there a year, and everybody was talking about what to do. And I'm not a talker, I'm a doer. Long on action, short on talk. And I want action in Olympia and want to rely on my collaborative leadership skills. And yes, I read your flyer, Daniel, but I'm a collaborative leader and pragmatic too, so I share that with you. That means we work with everybody. Republicans have great ideas, Democrats have great ideas, and together through good debate, we can have better outcomes. And I follow in alignment with a housing plus to help our homeless that are on the streets, in the tents, in the RVs, and get them the help they need. And that might be a intervention with social services. You know, we don't want, this isn't a arrest forever. It's a stop and triage. And I bring to Olympia a humanitarian, an environmentalist who's cleaned up over 1 million pounds of trash and let Seattle breathe again, and supported 14,000 hours of field work through my leadership in organizing volunteers, which is exactly the gap fill we need for a well-running government, is to bring volunteerism and civic engagement and voting turnout for a more beautiful, safe 43rd.
Thanks, Andrea. Daniel, it's now your turn.
So, Stephanie, and Andrea, you both have very admirable qualities that you want to bring to the legislature. Transparency in office is something that's needed. I want also there to be an open door between me and the residents of this district. And the effective collaborative spirit that you have, I also want to have that. Thing is, this is a 2-year position. Pending any electoral wins subsequently. But this is a 2-year position, and I want to mitigate the amount of learning on the job. Politics is something I've been doing for quite a while. I have a bachelor's degree in political science. I have a master's degree in applied American politics and policy. I have a master's degree in information management. I got accepted into law school. I'll throw that in there because I'm proud of it. But what this is saying is I'm dedicated to this. I've dedicated my life so far to this. I also have 3 years of professional experience tracking state government legislation. This is not going to be learning on the job. This is me, day one, going to be advocating for the issues that I want to pass and the issues that will ultimately positively result in good change for this district. I'll keep it short, and that'll be my close.
Okay, Sean?
Well, as of 7:15 p.m. this evening, I believe there was no place I would rather have been than knocking doors in Wallingford until it was explained to me that tonight's forum was inputted into my calendar incorrectly, at which point I made it over here to talk to Horizon House as quickly as I could. My opponents in this race will talk a lot about building coalitions and experience. At the same time, I'm the only campaign in this race that's actually been endorsed by sitting lawmakers in Olympia. Andrea is correct. Nicole Macri, who would be my seatmate, has supported me in this race, as has my predecessor in this role, Representative Chop. When we were doing our best to pass progressive revenue to make sure that we could fund the programs that we use in Washington State, it was unfortunate that I wasn't able to see some of my opponents in this race at that time. So to Daniel's point about making sure that we're not having folks in office who are learning on the job, I have somebody who's been in Olympia as a lobbyist the last 4 years, taking part of the coalition that passed the capital gains tax that is unfortunately under attack from the right in the state of Washington at this point, doing my best to further housing stability for Black and brown and low-income Washingtonians. I look forward to funding our public schools. I would like to see the Workforce Education Act, which my predecessor spearheaded in 2016, expanded so that college could become not just affordable but free to thousands of low-income and middle-income Washingtonians in the state of Washington. More than anything, I would like to bring a fresh perspective to the 43rd Legislative District. Representative Chop held this seat down for 30 years. If I'm lucky enough, I would last half as long in this seat as well. And if I feel like if I was able to accomplish half as much, I would call my time in the legislature a success as well. I think we have the resources to do everything that we want to see as true progressives in the state of Washington. The question is of urgency. The question is of whether or not we as a state are going to do what we know it is correct. Issues have been studied about how to house the homeless. They've been studied about how to reduce our emissions. Right now, it's about having elected officials that are going to build those coalitions. I believe I'm that candidate in this race, and I thank you for your consideration.
Well, now is the time of rousing applause for our candidates. Thank you all. And now I'm going to ask you to scurry out of your seats. You all need to stay where you are because coming up are the candidates for city council position. Again, thank you. Sorry about the mix-up.
Want us to take our name tags with us?
You think we should keep up the people who are here? I kind of think we should.
And I had to take time for my campaign, that's why I don't know what
I'll get you one.
they went to get you. They left everybody. So I spent my my campaign time calling, getting the newspapers, getting, and, yes, ma'am, and it burned up, and 3 fires happened there. I just, and nobody was helping them, and I could have been selfish, but I decided to take my time and get these people some help. I'm just getting one. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. I've enjoyed myself.
I'm sorry you were locked out.
Oh, that's completely fine. I think the wait
Here you go.
is for the doorbell is, like security can't see it. And so I think she was just like, who's out there? Who's out there about it later?
I'm glad you got it.
They were.
Good.
Oh, I can do that. Thank you.
Oh, I'll leave it here.
Oh, okay, thanks.
No, we have 3.
Thank you. Well, chair is here. Oh,
Okay, all right.
yeah. I think it'd be easier for others on that side to see you too.
Well-
Oh, because we're gonna stand, that's right. We're good.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Well, you can move closer and put her, she's not coming, so you can put her, we want her name tag. I'm going to ask you all to do whatever you need to do, however, to do it quietly. We are going to try to keep to our responsibility of time as well as asking candidates to do so. Were you all here at the beginning of the last forum? I mean, the last, so you heard the instructions, so I don't need to repeat them, right? Wonderful. You're very welcome. So, our format is going to be just like the format we did with the other candidates. We will start with opening statements, and candidates will have 2 minutes for each opening statement, and then we will jump right into the questions. So I actually have a whole schedule of how to call on people in a particular order so that I make sure that the order is randomized and nobody answers questions in the same order more than once or twice. Well, it's been thrown a tad off base, but I'll do the best I can. So we're going to start with Ms. Tanya Wu with the opening statement.
Hi, I'm Councilmember Tanya Wu, representing you on the Seattle City Council. I grew up in Beacon Hill, I live in the Rainier Valley, and I'm deeply rooted in the Chinatown International District. And I represent everyone from Columbia City to Lake City. I've tackled our toughest issues head on. I've organized community safety teams to increase public safety. I've also built housing in the heart of the city. And I mentor young women on the Seattle Chinese Community Girls Drill Team to ensure that our next generation of female leaders are successful. In my short time on council, I am most proud to have helped civilianize the Seattle Police Department, ensuring that our officers are making a competitive wage so that we can recruit the best officers in the region. I've also worked to help electrify our ports, making us one of the nation's top electrified ports and ensuring that our cruise ship berths all have electricity. I've also helped represent the city of Seattle in government-to-government negotiations with federally recognized tribes. So I recognize that we live in a world-class city and deserve world-class services. We've come a long ways, and we have so much more to go. My office focuses on these top 3 priorities. Number 1 is public safety. I'm building a Seattle that will keep our babies safe, because when our kids are safe, our families are safe, and our communities are safe. Number two, increasing affordability here in Seattle. We need to ensure that multi-generational families can stay and age in place while also making room for the next generation. And number three, we need to work on our homelessness issues. We have a long ways to go in terms of that. KCRJ has failed us. We need a regional approach, but we need to make it work. Also,
Thank you, Tanya.
thank you.
I forgot to tell everybody I have this cane that I pull out to get you off the stage when we overrun. Sonatina, would you go next, please?
Hello, everybody. My name is Sonatina Sanchez. My main motivation in running for City Council is to break down the silos that exist in city departments and in our nonprofit realm by using the connections that I've made being an organizer in Seattle for the last 20 years. I want to build on the successes that I've been a part of. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Seattle Transit Riders Union, a group I've served as treasurer, and by founding the Bus and Transit Service Work Group, the group that liaisons with the ATU Local 587, Sound Transit, Port of Seattle, King County Metro, and other government agencies that make decisions about our transportation system. I was chosen by my true peers to attend a national conference hosted by Transit Center to bring back Seattle best practices to transition our community away from car-centered design and make progress on our Vision Zero and climate impact goals. I was also asked to represent Transit Riders Union in presenting King Council member Claudia Balducci with a thank you card for being a strong advocate for transit on the east side. I currently sit on the board of Community Roots Housing as the resident representative, living in a Community Roots Housing building. I have been involved in many community projects over the last 20 years, including being a part of Real Rent Duwamish, the League of Women Voters of Seattle King County, Black Lives Memorial Garden, Unpaving Paradise Peat Patch, Literacy Source, the Seattle Renter Organizing Council, where we advocated for a $50,000 budget line item to create an Office of Rental Standards in the vein of Office of Labor Standards to make sure that the relationship between our renters and our property managers and owners are able to be managed much more successfully than is currently done with SDCI. I also support Treehouse for Kids, where I worked in college with a yearly birthday and fundraiser drive. My passion for public service comes from being raised by a mentally disabled mother and a farm worker father who instilled in me values that I wish to bring to the council. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Sonatina. Dargeek?
Why run for city council? Why would I uproot a lot of my life to spend a bunch of time asking people for money and doing a lot of things I'd rather not do? It's a question that I think we forget to, is kind of the elephant in the room here. And fundamentally, the reason is because I'm tired. I am tired of government not being open, not being transparent. I'm tired of the lack of vision that we have in local government. I'm tired of seeing the people that I grew up with unable to make their way through life. I was born a block from here in Virginia Mason, and I grew up in South Seattle in New Holly. Growing up, my family relied a lot on the social safety net and social services, from public housing to public health. I went from Pell Grants and food stamps to being able to own my own home and build a successful life and family. That journey is not possible today. That journey is not possible for most of the people that live in Seattle. And one of the key reasons for that, I believe, is the lack of compassion and care in government. That's something that I hope to bring in and something that I hope to show is needed and possible. We're told growing up, and we instill those values in our families, that compassion and care are so important. Why is government any different? Why do we not care for our neighbors at a systemic level, not just an individual level? And so my priorities in Seattle City Council is going to be focusing on preserving some of the best social safety net programs we have in the nation, and making sure that that buffer that we have, that interaction that we have with government for 70% of what we need on a day-to-day basis, continues to be open, transparent, and accountable to everybody, regardless of who you are. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the question and answer period of this forum. And we're going to start, Tariq, we're going to start with you on question 1. And I'll read you the question. Sorry? Okay. The United States Supreme Court just ruled that cities are allowed under the federal Constitution to punish people experiencing homelessness for sitting or sleeping outside, even though they do not have access to shelter. Would you support or oppose a law criminalizing such contact in Seattle? Why or why not?
There's a lot of opinions I have about the Supreme Court right now. So I went to school at the University of Washington doing my master's in jurisprudence, and doing that while the current Supreme Court has been going has been an adventure, seeing the classical traditions that we've had in this country upended. I think we cannot allow ourselves to be dictated by things that are happening at the national and state level. It's important for us to create an affirmative vision of what we believe. I believe that it is inhumane to punish people for something out of their control, out of their circumstances. We cannot take a punitive approach to homelessness. We need to provide options and ways that people can uplift themselves and get into better situations. Fundamentally, those things are outside of their control, and we need to take a human-first approach. Nobody wants to be on the street. That's where a lot of people are, though. And so let's actually think critically of how we're going to solve that instead of just sweeping them away to another place.
Sanatina? And anytime you want me to repeat a question, just let me know.
Thank you. Yes, I have followed this case very closely. As I mentioned in my opening, I have worked with mutual aid groups, primarily with the Black Lives Memorial Garden, and we supported a warming shelter on Nagel next to Cal Anderson Park. And from that experience, I know that when we were able to stabilize people, we were able to get housing for 4 to 5 people because their caseworkers were able to find them. When you're living on the street, you don't have electricity, it's hard to charge your phone, it's hard to keep in contact with people and get services and make it around the town. And so I think that criminalizing instead of supporting our neighbors with services, and our neighbors include the people who are housed and unhoused. The services that I talk about in terms of trash pickup and bathrooms are things that will help everybody in our society. And so if we provide them for people who are the most vulnerable right now, it will benefit us all. And that's the approach I think we should be taking as a society.
And now it's your turn, Tanya.
So I also run a mutual aid group. We walk once a week. I've gone to encampments, and I've talked to people, and I do support Mayor Harrell's plan on making sure that every single person is offered a shelter or housing before going in and resolving an encampment. And usually they will not go in and resolve the encampment unless about 2 or 3 months ahead of time we have social workers coming in to get to know people, build trust, and that there is shelter or housing available for people to move into. And no, I know there are a lot of people who refuse to go into shelter or housing. And with that, I believe that many people have been through the system. The system is broken. They lost trust. They are not allowed to go into shelters because they have a pet or they have a partner. And so with that, we need to make sure we build trust by making sure that there's constant social workers out at encampments helping build that trust with our unhoused neighbors and community involvement as well. Thank you.
Moving now to question 2. The City Council will decide how to close the more than $250 million gap anticipated in next year's budget. Since the city's fiscal year runs from January to December 31, if elected, you will not be part of this year's budget cutting effort, with the exception, of course, of Councilwoman Wu. Nevertheless, what categories of funding would you recommend be cut or eliminated, and what high priority programs would you protect? If you are elected to the council, you'll be dealing with it in the next year in any event. Please be as specific as possible. Let's begin with Tanya.
Thank you. So yes, we do have a $250 million budget deficit, even more with the latest union contracts that we have just passed in council. And so I believe everything is on the table. We need to make sure that taxpayers' investments are being paid off and that you are seeing results on our streets. We need to make sure that our departments are delivering results. And so I think it's very important to have that measurement. I know a lot of people ask about Jumpstart. And in the past, we have used the excess funding from Jumpstart to help supplement the budget. And I think that's something that we're looking at possibly. Another thing I really want to highlight is economic development. 60% of our budget is paid for by our small businesses. And so making sure that we help economic vitality, we help our small businesses, we help our communities and nonprofits is very important because that helps the entire city.
Sanatina?
I am support of a 2% Seattle capital gains tax to plug up our budget to, and I want to put that out there first because I think that we should also, when we say everything is on the table, we need to include the police budget that ballooned our $200 million deficit to $250 million currently. And so there are consequences to the decisions that are being made on council, and right now, council is increasing our budget without a lot of value being seen for it. We have a $1.1 or so million fund for ghost cops, funding that will never be used to hire police because it's not projected to ever be possible. And we could be using that to hire a group of janitors and maintenance workers for our park system to, again, open up the bathrooms year round. So these are the kinds of things that I want to look at is how do we increase our revenue base without going to regressive sources, and how do we make sure we're spending things on the right services?
Tariq?
Yeah, I think like all of us mentioned here, we're not going to get to a balanced budget without bringing in more progressive revenue options that bring some of that wealth that we have in our communities and spreading it across everyone that needs them. My priority for whatever deficit ends up coming in through next year is going to be one, making sure that we maintain the, I guess what I call frontline programs. These are the programs that you go face to face when dealing. These are going to be things like, say, I need to, I'm currently receiving housing vouchers. I want to make sure that those continue. Things that help ensure survival and stability. The second thing is making sure that we keep promises. When we've earmarked money for a reason, we want to make sure that it stays there. And then 3, responsible investments. We can't continue to throw away money at different things that are half measures or not proven. And we've seen that in the last couple of years in City Council, and I think that's what we need to change. Thank you.
You can sit down, but you'll have to get up in a minute. Question 3. What policy options would you promote to help achieve carbon neutrality?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is figure out ways we can systemically improve everyone's carbon footprint as a whole. Increasing transit options is a huge solution for that. Increasing options for micromobility, whether that is the various scooters or whatnot, to dial a ride to MetroFlex. We need to create solutions that work for everybody. And I think the more that we can prioritize and put resources into that, that is going to make a significant impact. There's numbers of other things that the city has done historically around building codes and ensuring that we're able to plan our city forward for a more sustainable future. One of the things that I want to prioritize is ensuring that we are building healthy ecosystems within each neighborhood. You shouldn't need to be able to go cross town to get your groceries. You should be able to go maybe 1 or 2 blocks. If we can build local sustainable communities, we can build a local sustainable environment.
Next up is Sanatina.
A lot of that 20-year organizing experience that I mentioned earlier has been involved in transportation, transit, biking, and climate action. All of these are intimately connected. We know that 60 to 70% of our carbon emissions are made from our transportation system, mostly single occupancy vehicles. And so when we design our cities to be more human-centered, transit-oriented, developed, walkable, when we have the ability to build 6 floors and small commercial stores in dense neighborhoods, people want to walk around and businesses thrive and our communities thrive, and it's better for the environment and people and us all. And so that's my main thing is in order for us to get to our climate goals in as well as Vision Zero, we need to look at our land use and make sure that we are planning our communities in order to transition away from car-centric design.
Your turn, Tanya.
I chair the Sustainability Committee. And there are a couple of things that are coming up. We're looking at the building emissions program and making sure we're doing the rulemaking for that. I think trees are very important. We're not reaching our goal of 30% tree canopy. I live in South Seattle. It's a heat island, a tree desert. And so how do we look at policies that allow for building housing and trees? It's not either or. We could do both. And I think that's very important. Also, I noticed that other countries are able to reach carbon neutrality because of usage of solar panels. And so how do we connect federal funding to our local communities, especially marginalized communities, to be able to have access to this fund to be able to put solar panels on top of their buildings, basically. And I also believe that the transportation plan will have an opportunity to allow for more EV charging stations and for more trees as well. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to pass. I got everybody? Did I leave anybody out? No. Okay. Sometimes I do that, not by intent. Our next question, we're going to shift now to another topic. What action would you take as a city council member to reduce gun violence in the city? And Sonatina, we'll start with you on this one.
I was born here in Seattle. I grew up down in Holly Park and King Way and Yesler Terrace in the 80s. And so I distinctly remember drive-by shootings and gangs selling lots of drugs around my neighborhoods. And I know that if a lot of my classmates and my neighbors were given other options, if they were able to sign up for classes at community centers, if they were able to sign up for sports, if they could afford these things, they would have done them, but they weren't. And so that's one of the things is I come from a community which we had to fight to participate in hobbies that we loved, and I want to make that easy. I want to make sure that every single kid in Seattle can sign up for any extracurricular activity they want, and we can have a scholarship program of some sort. We need to make sure that we give options, good options, and encourage the children that we see to develop their passions outside of the violent cycle that we currently see.
Tanya?
And I believe Santina is correct. It starts with our young people. I was at the site of a 14-year-old child who was shot in New Holly Park this last week and was talking to neighbors, talking to family members, and community saying that, we have failed our kids because the parents are asking for more resources for their communities to be able to allow for their children to have activities to go to. I mean, we just had the shooting at Garfield High School, Alderwood Mall, not in Seattle, but still where that 13-year-old was shot. It's very sad and it's affecting our young people the most. I've also talked to the gentleman who was shot outside of a hookah lounge this past week. And talking to family members, they want to see more community dialogue. The people who are closest to the issues have the solutions, and we need to listen and we need to implement them.
Derek?
Yeah, I think most people, we don't resort to violence unless we are pushed in a situation where we have to do that. Providing stability and providing a sense of community is key to that. Providing things like making sure, do kids have meals to eat? Do kids have a place to stay? Do kids feel safe in their homes? These are key things that address the systemic factors that cause not just gun violence, but all types of crime. With guns specifically, we need to, I want to lobby the state to pass a permit to purchase program. It is essential that we know that anybody who owns a firearm has a responsibility of keeping that safe. And I want to see an expansion of civil penalties I would be open to seeing this expansion on civil penalties for violations of safe storage laws. You have a firearm, it is your responsibility to take care of it as you would when you're going to a range or you're with a family member.
Thank you. We have just one more question before we go to the closing statements. And with this question, we'd like to start with Tanya first. And the question is, what actions do you propose or would you propose to reach an adequate level of staffing for the Seattle Police Department?
So there are a couple of things that council has done in the last couple of months. We helped make sure that our officers are making a competitive wage so that we can hire the best officers. Prior to that, we were getting about 3 applications a week, and now that's tripled. We're getting 10 or 12 applications. We also need to make sure that our officers have the resources they need to be successful. I believe it's not just officers that need to respond to every situation. We have expanded our care team, which is very exciting here to D3. And so we are working on making sure that happens in the next budget cycle. We also have to make sure that we are expanding our services, making sure that there's wraparound care for people when they are ready to seek treatment, that's available. And I think most importantly, we need to work with our communities. I love the Before the Badge program where cadets go into communities and learn about the communities they serve. I think it's about changing the tone and making sure that when we pick the next police chief, that this person is the right person for the job. And I'm very excited about Chief Sue Rohr's work with 30 by 30, and thank you.
Tari, you're up.
Yeah, I was happy to see the expansion of the CARE program. We've seen this program work so successfully in other cities where you take and provide specialized response solutions to the crises that people are facing. I think the way that we address a lot of staffing issues is by looking at where we can build out those more specialized responses outside of an officer, with a gun. I think the majority of cases, I actually looked at the dispatch data, I think roughly 2/3 of the cases that were dispatched last year could have been solved without, an officer showing up with a firearm except just to protect a dispatcher or to protect someone who is there. And so I think we need to really radically expand that and provide and make it easier so that when officers come in, they're going to a call, they know exactly what they're going to, instead of having to be the catch-all for any kind of issue that anybody has.
Stein, can you?
I'm of the mind I'm of the mind we currently have plenty of police in our city, and I'm wondering what jobs we are looking to have done. I right now, when I ride transit or if I walk through my parks, I see lots of security guards currently, and I wonder, could those people be wiping down the stairwells or looking at our escalators or elevators? And if something does happen, they can call it in if something's really needed. These are people we can support with training for de-escalation tactics. I worked at DESC during the pandemic, and I often had to de-escalate situations with people who were in altered states, and I did not have any weapons on me, and in fact, they probably would have made the situation worse. And so I ask, what are we funding? What jobs are we funding? And if we really want to bring public safety to our streets, we need to start funding the people who care for our streets, like janitors, maintenance workers, waste pickup, and all that kind of stuff. Thank you.
Well, that concludes the question and answer part of the forum, and we're now going to move to closing remarks. And this time, we're going to be starting with Sanatina. Oh, you want her? Okay.
So I was, from my opening statement, I wanted to go into my closing and let you all know my passion for public service comes from my family. My mom is a lifelong mentally disabled woman who is functionally illiterate and was still expected to navigate and get through the world like everybody else. without understanding. And so from a very young age, I learned how to translate these complex systems, the bureaucracy and the social services, in order to make sure that we could get services sometimes. My dad also developed this passion for service in me by teaching us to be compassionate to everyone. These lessons took this form of stories where he told us he would stand up to bullies. And one of the ones that sticks out is when he stuck up for a gay kid in high school. And it made me feel safe that I could come out to him at a time in the 90s where it was very scary, and you could very easily be sent out on the street. And honestly, that still is the case. And I bring these experiences by continuing to work in my community. I am at Cal Anderson Park every Monday morning at 9 a.m. serving breakfast with the community, chatting with the people on the street about what their issues, what do they need from their council member. And I continue to participate in various volunteer roles. As I said, I sit on the board of Community Roots Housing. I was also the guest relations coordinator at the Seattle International Film Festival for many years, and so I was able to interact with people, volunteers, all the way up to A-list stars. And I know every single job at a organization, every single person on a project matters, and that's the kind of attitude I'm hoping to bring to Seattle City Council, is making sure that the people who serve our city in office and in the administration are respected, and we make Seattle a place where we can all boast about what a world-class city it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tanya?
I think it's a very exciting time to be on the Seattle City Council. We have council members now who are collaborative. We're all in person, and we all have shared priorities and united in terms of what we hope for the city, in terms of public safety, building more housing, and affordability. I've been endorsed by all but one of the council members. I also just was endorsed by the Seattle Times today. And so I believe that, we represent the city and promoting more civility, and more collaboration. One thing I want to touch on that I thought would get asked but wasn't is housing. We need to build more housing. That's where my experience has come in. I helped redevelop the Louisa Hotel apartments into workforce housing, and I'm working on legislation currently that will help jumpstart more housing development. You look around, all the cranes are gone, and it's very important that 2 to 3 years from now, we're gonna feel that housing deficit. So I'm working on legislation that help incentivize developer benefits as well as the public benefit to get that started. I also want to be able to save our trees, so looking at legislation that will allow for density bonuses if people save trees. I'm also looking at air rights, so my lived experience really do help with how I legislate. Another thing I think is really important is public safety. You deserve to feel safe going to the QFC, to Harvard Market, going to the park. And that's something I'm really interested in, making sure that we make those community investments so that people will be able to go to the grocery store and not have to fear for their kids or their cousins or their parents' safety. So my work speaks for itself. I walk every single week. I'm out in community. I go to as many public meetings as I can. And when I hear that there's a community that needs to be heard, I go out there. I grew up in the Chinatown International District. I'm a small business owner. I have a family restaurant. And so making sure we close that wealth gap is also very important. How do we help our entrepreneurs? How do we help people find good paying wage jobs? And so I ask for your support. My name is Tanya Wu, and ask for your vote to keep Seattle affordable, safe, and a place to live.
Your last word is yours, Doug.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for showing up. It's really important to have so many people engaged and involved. One of the challenges with running for this position, it's just a remaining one-year term. There's not a whole, we can talk about what our vision is, and I think that's important, but I think the thing that I want to be able to bring to City Council is showing how could our local government work better. We're fortunate in Seattle to be able to afford full-time council positions. For someone whose job is 40 hours a week to help make the city better, what can that look like? How do you balance that with direct service, accountability, and action? And I've asked myself this question every day since I've learned that it was a full-time position. And I think that even though this position is 1 year, and it's hard to get a lot done in a year, the government timeline, But I think what we can do is say, this is what a world-class city really looks like. This is what a city on the world stage really looks like. And this is how we paint our identity as being proud residents and members of the Pacific Northwest, where we don't force out our community and our neighbors, but we bring them in, bring them safe places to heal and to learn and to be part of our communities. And I'm hoping that that vision resonates with all of you here and that we can bring those values into City Council. Thank you.
Thank you all. And now you can all applaud for the wonderful work for these candidates. Shortly, I'm going to turn this over to May Gersel, who has a few closing comments to make. I just want to thank all of you who are here. I believe that this in-person approach to the forums really brings you out, and is wonderful to do what we do together, which is listen in community when we have the privilege of hearing people who are willing to put their careers on the line, their futures, by standing up and becoming candidates. So thank you again. And May, where are you? Oh, there you are.
Well, I just wanted to tell you that our next election forum is 1 week from today on July 15th. And that will feature the statewide insurance commissioner race, as well as the contest for the state superintendent of public construction, two very important state offices. The moderator for that one will be Bill Anderson, and you will have an opportunity to send questions in. And you will also be able to see that forum via Zoom on HHTV or on the large screens right behind me here in Anderson Hall. The reason that we're doing it as a webinar is that these are statewide positions, and people from Eastern Washington, Wenatchee, and so forth find it difficult to come to western part of the state. So we're offering webinars to the people who come from elsewhere, and we will always have in-house programs here for Seattle candidates. Thank you all for coming, and have a good evening.